At some point in your life, you packed a bag and went somewhere you'd never been before, maybe across the country, maybe across the world. You had a map, a phone, a ticket, a plan. You knew where you were going and how to get back. Now imagine doing that with none of those things: no map, no compass, no roads, no idea what was on the other side of the horizon, no guarantee you'd find food, water, or shelter, no way to know if what you were walking toward was better than what you were leaving behind. That is exactly what your ancestors did. And they did it not once, but over and over for hundreds of thousands of years until there was no continent left to cross. The story of the first human journeys is the story of the most extraordinary feat of exploration in the history of life on Earth. And it begins with a single species in a single place deciding to walk. About 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared in Africa. For a long time, we stayed. Africa is vast, resource rich, and familiar. There was no obvious reason to leave. But around 70,000 years ago, something changed. The climate shifted, drought spread across the continent, food sources shrank, water became scarce, and a small group, geneticists estimate as few as a few hundred individuals, walked north out of Africa, through the Sinai Peninsula and into the Middle East, into a world no human had ever seen. We know this because of DNA. Every non African person alive today is descended from that single group of travelers. Every European, every Asian, every indigenous American, every person in Australia, all of them trace back to that one walk out of Africa. The entire human population outside the continent descended from a group smaller than most high schools. From the Middle East, the journeys split. One group pushed east, following the coastline of Asia. They moved fast, faster than scientists expected. By 65,000 years ago, humans had reached Australia, which means they crossed at least 60 miles of open ocean to get there, on rafts or boats made from materials that left no trace. In the dark, without stars they recognized, navigating water they had never seen before. This is the oldest confirmed ocean crossing in human history, tens of thousands of years before the Egyptians built the pyramids. Tens of thousands of years before anyone in Europe had thought to put a boat in the water. The first sailors weren't Vikings or Phoenicians, they were barefoot Australians crossing the sea before recorded history began. Another group went north, into the cold, into Europe. Around 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens arrived on a continent already occupied by Neanderthals who had been there for over 200,000 years. Within 5,000 years of our arrival, the Neanderthals were gone. We don't fully know what happened, but we know that wherever Homo sapiens traveled, the world changed, animals went extinct, landscapes were transformed, other species disappeared. We were not passive travelers. We remade everything we touched. By 15,000 years ago, humans had crossed into North America, probably following herds of animals across a land bridge where the Bering Strait is today. And then they kept going, south through what is now Canada, the United States, Mexico, all the way down through Central America, into South America, reaching the southern tip of the continent, the coldest, most remote place in the Western Hemisphere, by around 12,000 years ago. In less than 3,000 years, humans had walked the entire length of two continents. That's roughly 10,000 miles on foot, through jungles, mountains, deserts, and ice, without maps, without roads, without any knowledge of what lay ahead. What drove them? Scientists have debated this for decades. Part of it was necessity: climate, drought, competition for resources. But necessity alone doesn't explain all of it. Humans were moving into places that weren't obviously better than where they came from. They were crossing oceans they didn't have to cross, climbing mountains that blocked their path instead of going around them. The most compelling theory is that exploration is simply part of what we are. In 2011, researchers identified a variant of the DRD4 gene, sometimes called the wanderer gene, that is linked to curiosity, restlessness, and the drive to seek novelty. It's more common in populations whose ancestors migrated long distances than in populations who stayed in one place, as if the act of moving selected for the desire to keep moving. The travelers became better travelers with every generation. The age of ocean exploration in the 15th century is often called the greatest era of discovery in history. But that's only true if you ignore everything that came before it. When Columbus crossed the Atlantic in 1492, he thought he was doing something no human had ever done. He was wrong. The people he found when he arrived had been there for at least 15,000 years. Their ancestors had already completed the most audacious journey in human history and done it without a single ship. The Polynesian navigators of the Pacific sailed canoes across the largest ocean on Earth using only the stars, the waves, and the flight patterns of birds. They settled islands separated by thousands of miles of open water. No GPS, no instruments, just knowledge passed down through generations and the will to keep going. In 1969, a human being stood on the moon. We called it the greatest journey ever made. And in terms of distance from Earth, it was. But in terms of courage, relative to what was known, relative to the complete absence of any map, any precedent, any guarantee of survival, the person who first crossed 60 miles of open ocean on a raft 65,000 years ago was doing something just as extraordinary, maybe more. We are a species that moves. It is written into our genes, our history, and our restlessness. Every road, every shipping lane, every flight path, every signal beaming between satellites overhead, all of it is the modern form of the same impulse that made someone stand on the edge of Africa 70,000 years ago and decide to see what was on the other side. We never stopped walking. We just got faster.